Welcome back to another episode of the Wild Ones podcast, a show where we chat about bike stuff. I'm Jimmy, and I am here with Francis and producer Emily. How are we both doing? We good?
Pretty good. I feel so much better than last week because I didn't run to work.
You did cycle though, didn't you? We'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Our listeners wanted to know from last week, were our DMs full after our OnlyFans chat?
I haven't looked. Has anyone actually looked?
Wait, why would people send us DMs?
I think because we jokingly offered our services, which we didn't. We haven't. We were only joking, but they were saying that our DMs were going to be full up. Mine weren't. I'm not in very high demand.
Let me have a quick look at the Cade Media.
I haven't been on that.
On the Cade Media DMs account. There is currently 468 unread messages.
But maybe we'll leave that one.
It's Jimmy's job to look through.
How are you, Jimmy?
I'm good. So I actually have a question to our wonderful, beautiful audience. I need some help. So my old car died a death and has gone off to the scrap heap in the heavens. And I've got a new car coming later this week. Well, I say new, it's not new, it's a used car. We ride bikes, as does, I imagine, most of, if not all of our audience. I have a car which I hope to keep nice for very many years into the distant future. I historically used to put bikes on the roof and I had bike racks on the roof, but I don't want to have bike racks on the roof anymore. What is the best way to transport bikes without trashing your car that doesn't require loads of stuff on your car all of the time?
So you don't want a bike rack?
I don't want a bike rack on the roof 24/7.
I don't drive, but I've been in a car before with bikes on the roof.
Yeah.
And it was Lawrence's car, and he had like a budget version of a sea sucker.
Right.
Like a fake one, a copy. And we got to our destination, and then one of them had come off. Oh. So his bike was just flailing above the car. We couldn't hear it. And it didn't actually fall off and kill anyone, so I guess that's a plus.
I do like the look of sea suckers, but I imagine they're really expensive. If anyone's used them before and has anything good or bad to say about them, please let me know.
For people who don't know, it's the things from if you need to climb a building, like that.
Yeah.
That's where they developed the technology for Ethan Hunt, and then they moved it to bikes.
I see. So it explains why they're so expensive.
Yeah.
Film star level sea sucking.
Film star? I thought he was a secret agent.
There are other things that you can do stuff inside the car with like protectors and things. The other option is like a tow bar thing that goes on the back, but then you have to store it and take it on and off. Ultimately, what's the best way to transport bikes in/on a car without trashing the car and without stuff being on it all of the time? I want your answers. Send them to me, please.
Should we get into some news?
First,
I've just seen the picture. What have you found?
the latest innovation in aerodynamic cycling backpacks has finally arrived. Yes, Francis, your prayers have been answered. You've been asking this for decades. As long as I've known you, you've wanted a product like this. You even considered developing one yourself, but now you don't need to. It is here. I'm not joking. This may be the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. A few of you have flagged it to us. It's called the RAF1 by Ram Air Fairing. And according to their website, it is the ultimate lightweight air-filled backpack.
I think it probably is. That's a fair claim.
The design of it is bold, to say the least. It's essentially a massive inflatable fairing that sits on your back and looks like a humongous shark fin. Or maybe like an aeroplane wing.
Yeah, it's not quite a shark fin, is it? It's more than that.
It's more than a whale fin, perhaps.
If you were a cartoon and you were going fast, it would be like the lines that are off behind you. It's huge.
That comic book thing.
Yeah, but also it refers to itself as a backpack. And when I was looking at this story, I thought it was a backpack as in you can put your lunch in there, you can put your clothes for commuting to the office. It's not actually a backpack as in to hold things.
You could put loads of things in there as long as the things are a gas.
Right, okay, yeah.
Like farts.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Jimmy. I was thinking about my helium and stuff that you keep in the fridge.
What is the purpose of this?
It is to make you more aerodynamic than ever.
Right.
It probably works.
It also has a secondary feature. So as well as offering drag reduction, It is also being marketed as a safety airbag.
Right. But presumably you can't use these in races, can you? This has got to be banned.
Depends on the race.
Well, I imagine there's some bike packing-y stuff or like Audax-y things you could use it on. But it's definitely not going to be okay in UCI events or like proper bike racing, like drop bar road racing. It's not.
I wonder where the line
useful
is with it. So in gravel racing, everyone uses camelbacks, and a lot of the reason for using a camelback is it's a little bit extra water and easy to get when you're racing hard. But most of the camelbacks that they use now at the top level make you faster. So some of them are like built into your skin suit, and then some of them are just faster than not wearing one in the first place. But where's the line?
Well, here,
you can't argue
this
that's
is the
anything
line.
other than
we've reached the line.
We've just a bit of a balloon in your stuff.
Well, I would imagine in some cases there will be bladder packs where they are filled with air rather than water, because obviously air is lighter than water.
People do that weird thing; they put things down the front of their skin suits to make them faster.
Yeah.
Didn't that get banned, or in some places, some things it's banned,
you get in trouble for it sometimes.
I think some of that has come about from the triathlon world as well, because there's definitely loads of stuff in the tri world. So triathlon is not regulated in the same way as road racing is. So they can often do things that are a bit more extreme. And there was definitely stuff about people having like big bottles on their chest stuff. And I think that even they're considering or have banned things in different stuff. So a lot of it will come from those kind of things. And I think it's really good, though, that people are exploring innovation.
But it's in aerodynamics, which I feel like is your least favourite thing, spending money on weird things to go faster.
Well, yeah, I don't like it. For me, this is not well, to be honest, I probably would buy this product for lols, just to wind people up.
Look at that guy.
The thing is, I feel like I'm being gaslit by their website because it keeps referring to this as being stylish. And I don't know whether this is a sort of psychological...
If you say it enough.
Exactly. We were talking about this last week. If you say something enough, people will believe you. The website says the air-filled backpack embodies the perfect fusion of performance, style and sustainability, combining functionality and bold fashion. Our backpack is designed with contemporary aesthetics to complement your cycling gear and enhance performance. It allows you to express your unique style while providing a stylish accessory that seamlessly blends form and function on every ride.
That is the biggest load of trout I've ever heard in my life.
What are you talking about? They've done a white one for white jerseys and black one for black jerseys. It's very... And helmets. It'll match your helmet.
What's sustainable about it? It's a big piece of plastic bag.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a lot about eco-friendly and sustainability. You'd be a lot more sustainable if you didn't have it. For anyone who's listening, just Google RAF1 or RAM airfaring and have a look at this thing. It is huge.
It's the kind of thing that I imagine there's cycling brands out there going like, "Oh, this is great. We can brand that."
Imagine the size of the logo you can slap on the side of that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like those Uber Eats bags that have like inspired this? You know, the delivery people with
do
the
they
massive
advertise
backpacks.
on the back? Yeah.
Because it's basically that, but in a different shape, isn't it?
If you're interested in performance, you want something that you can use in racing. If this is banned from most races, which I assume it would, who is this for? Because the people on the photo, it's two guys who just look like they're out for like a nice jolly ride, but then they've got these massive things on their back. Like, in what scenario are you using this?
The other thing as well, if we really want to talk aero, if you were in an aero-optimized position, that fairing is pointing nearly up in the air.
Probably less aero.
Exactly.
So it's specifically aimed at people who sit quite upright on a bike.
In a non-aero position.
In a non-aero position. Not everyone can tolerate a very aero position, Jimmy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they're probably not racing, are they?
Well, what if they want to be included? This allows them to be. It's excellent. I want one.
This allows them to be included in aero.
Yeah.
So we currently don't have a price for this, do we? It's showing us sold out. I think that's actually because it hasn't gone on sale yet.
It's because it's so popular, Emily. It's sold out already.
Perhaps.
It's quite striking, but it's no more silly than wearing a big long pair of aero socks.
It's probably no. That is I have to pull you up on that.
Why?
That is an outrageous statement. This is no more silly than wearing socks.
Big long aero ones, yeah.
What?
Or what about a base layer that's a crop top?
Underneath your
I guess you can't
top.
see it, yeah. But so you're worried about what people think of you when you're riding long?
No. This is ridiculous in compared to aero socks because you're putting socks on regardless. You're not going to, just before you go out riding, pump up your tyres, Pump up your aero pack.
No, is that how you do it, or do you do?
I hope at the very least they have considered that the target audience is cyclists, and they will have some form of pump, and you can actually. I bet it doesn't even have an adapter for a pump. It's basically part of like an inflatable bed that they've stuck on their back.
That's sick. I'm the target market.
You are the target market.
We know what we're getting Francis for Christmas then.
Way more convenient than a TT bike.
Significantly slower. Definitely slower. You know it.
Funnily enough, we tested the closest thing I have seen tested in front of my eyes to this is the tail fin in a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
And by just putting a tail fin, which is basically a seat pack on your bike, a tail fin with stuff in it is more aerodynamic than not a tail fin at all, because it extends the shape of your body.
Yeah, which I think
is
the
exactly
same,
what they're doing here. If you look at the world speed record for mountain biking downhill, something like that, I'll find it. It's basically a guy in a red suit with fairings all over the suit, and that reminds me of this as well. It looked absolutely ridiculous, but he's so fast. So if he was, he didn't care what people think of him, Jimmy. He'd be riding down the street here in Newcastle in the middle, Grey Street, so fast.
Yep.
In fact, you'd be going so fast wearing one of these, no one's going to see you. You'd just be a blur, like the Flash.
Like a cartoon character running.
Correct. All they'll see is the trail behind.
I think, and we've talked about this numerous times, we need to go back to the wind tunnel, and we 100% should do a video where we specifically test outrageous aero products.
Well, yeah, we've done the sensible one.
Yeah, we need to do
which was entertaining as it was.
The crazy one.
We need to do the crazy stuff. Yeah.
I think it will be faster because of what you said. A fairing on the back is faster, but
it's likely it will in an upright position.
I know Aerocoach are up for that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
They let us do a big inflatable suit.
Do you not just fly away?
It was quite flappy.
Okay. Elsewhere in the world of cycling, American endurance rider Lael Wilcox has just set a new record for cycling around the world.
Congratulations. Awesome.
It took her 108 days and 12 hours, and she rode a total of 18,125 miles, or just over 29,000 kilometres, which is huge. Pending approval by Guinness World Records, her effort beats the previous women's record set by Scottish cyclist Jenny Graham by more than 2 weeks. Also,
shout out to Jenny Graham.
Yeah. Lael's record-breaking route took her across 22 countries and 4 continents. She covered 168 miles or 270 kilometres a day with an average moving speed of 14.4 miles per hour, aka 23 kph. And when she finished, she said she felt like she could have kept riding forever, which is insane. However, I feel like that is a thing. I've read books on, there's that guy who did a marathon every day for however long, and Eddie Izzard did something similar, and they both describe the feeling of once you get into the rhythm of that, your body stops going, oh my God, are we doing another marathon? They go, oh, what kind of marathon are we doing today? It just almost becomes part of your routine in some...
I think there's some science to say you need to taper off.
Yeah, there is.
And like detrain, and like you don't want to just stop cold turkey.
Yeah.
For physical and mental reasons.
So the sheer size and scale of this challenge is both staggering and incredibly impressive. However, there are some people who've been left confused as to why the record is called Around the World when technically her route misses out Asia, and unlike Jenny's. We actually had one listener called Steve who wrote to us, said, I read this week that Lael Wilcox had broken the Around the World record. As someone who has never done an endurance event or bikepacking, I'm hugely impressed by that. Averaging around 166 miles a day for that many days is quite frankly incredible. My question to you, though, is should it really count as Around the World when it didn't feature Asia? You'll notice the easternmost point on our route is Tbilisi in Georgia. She then jumps from there to Perth, Australia. Georgia is 4 hours ahead of us and Perth is 8, so that's a big part of the world to cut out. I'm aware that there would have been challenges to ride through some countries in Asia, but surely it should include some of the major countries there to count as a proper around the world attempt. What do you think? Love the show. Keep up the good work. Steve?
So I think it is a very good point to raise, because I imagine a lot of people will have the same query.
They have, yes.
What I do know, which I'm sure you're going to tell us all about in a moment, is that it will be based on the rules set out by Guinness.
Yes, exactly. So I've had a little bit of a dig into the rules set out by Guinness World Records. To qualify for the fastest circumnavigation of the globe by bicycle, you have to ride at least 18,000 miles, start and end at the same point, ride in one direction, either east or west, don't zigzag or go back on yourself by more than 5 degrees, only use commercial travel to get between continents. The combined length of travel by bike and flights, etc., must be at least 24,900 miles, which is the length of the equator, and you have to cross 2 opposite sides of the globe. So Lael chose Madrid in Spain and Wellington in New Zealand. As long as all of those rules are achieved, you've officially circumnavigated the globe by bike according to Guinness.
What does 2 opposite sides of the globe mean?
They're called like antipodes. So if we were here, if we sort of drew a line straight through the Earth to the other side, it's where would you be?
Right, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So the exact opposite side of the world from where we are now. Or where,
what if it's the middle of the sea?
Well, you have to pick 2 that aren't.
Oh. Unless you want a pedalo.
So I think a lot of the as is any ultra event where you pick your own route, a lot of the success can be determined by the route that you choose.
Yeah. It's part of some of those ultras, isn't it?
100%.
The route choice is part just as much of the challenge as the riding.
So my opinion on this is the rules have been followed and therefore it's a legit world record. There are always going to be logistical challenges that change how the route is approached. And there ultimately isn't a single way around the world. So there has to be like conditions.
I think the conditions seem well thought out.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of things you have to stick to there.
Yeah,
I can see why people go, purely looking at the maps, one looks more direct and all-encompassing than the other. But it doesn't matter, according to the rules. So as long as the rules are followed.
This is it. It's interesting because Lael's, she goes a slightly longer route through Europe and through North America, which obviously makes up then the distance. Mm-hmm. And what that's probably allowed her to do is she's probably spent a lot of proportion in her time in English-speaking countries, which if you speak English,
of course, yeah,
is helpful. There's obviously a lot of Europe there as well, but it's tactically not a bad shout, is it? If you then come into danger or
but the things like just similar cultures and stuff just make it more
totally.
Like if there's anywhere in Europe where she gets a mechanical, she knows what to look for, what to find, where to go. Or America, it's just more familiar.
Totally. I think it's a case of don't hate the player, hate the game. However, I guess you could argue that perhaps there should be some update in the rules or another one set where you actually have to go through. I mean, people have mentioned a lot that she's missed out Asia. She also missed out Africa and South America as well. So how far do you go with this around the world thing? Is it just a straight line?
There's so many things to consider, though. There's some countries where some places that you aren't safe riding through. You have to consider all these things, don't you?
Totally. Steve wanted to know, though, he said very generously, we as a collective have ridden a lot of Asia. That's definitely not true of me and Jimmy. Francis, you've ridden some of Asia. Where would you recommend as part of that route?
There is a guy called Duncan riding around the world at the moment. His route would be amazing, which I think goes in. He rides down through Vietnam, Thailand. It'll be awesome that way. Duncan Covey UK on Instagram, and he's currently, I think he's in Kyrgyzstan as we speak. But his route is excellent. He's posted his full route, and I'm thinking, if I was to do it, that would be the route I would choose. And he's chosen it based on adventure.
If you were to do
speed.
it, I would watch it.
I would love to do it. I haven't ridden that much of Asia. I've done India, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and then you can finish in Singapore, which is an amazing place to finish as well. Although getting across the border takes a long time.
I think if you're doing this as an adventure, even if you're going around the world, but you're almost doing it for pleasure, then you should absolutely see all of these places. If you're doing it as this is ultimately a competition, isn't it? So you choose the most effective path that's within the rules.
I would love to do this without time constraints.
Exactly.
And just that would be the way to do it for, I feel, for most people. And East Asia, I've had comments before, like, why did you go back again? And it's like, well, it's completely different countries. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might border each other, but the culture changes so drastically, and the language changes, and the food changes, and it's always warm. if it rains, it doesn't matter. Things like that. Southeast Asia is well up there on my list. I am excited to do more, despite having been there a few times. So yeah, it's a great place.
I think this highlights that there are actually two things that go by the same name, isn't there? There's around the world cycling and there's the world record around the world thing. And around the world cycling, people think of how many countries can I ride through? Whereas for the record, it's how little can I do to meet the minimum requirements.
Yeah, totally.
Which is completely logical.
Yeah, it's route optimization, yes. However, you could say that perhaps they should change their rules. I don't think that this record should be discounted or anything like that, but if you were looking at it, you could say perhaps they should change their rules so that they have to go through so many time zones or something like that to cut out this kind of thing. But I doubt they're ever going to retrospectively change that and discount Lille's record, and they shouldn't really.
No, of course they shouldn't. Right, so news is thin on the ground this week. We are going to do a good old-fashioned big question. This one is a suggestion from long-time listener Francis.
I wrote that. Francis suggested this.
Oh,
Thank you, Francis.
I forgot our conversation. What's my question?
We've been riding bikes for a long time. What are some of the worst and/or funniest crashes and injuries we have sustained? Most of these are going to come from you and videos that you've made over the years.
Thankfully, I've been making videos so long, I've got footage of most of these. So you can put that in, Emily.
So let's go with the first one, which many people, or a good proportion of the audience, will already know about. I have very good knowledge of, because I had to wipe your ass a few times. You broke both of your arms racing Red Hook Crit in New York.
Correct.
Tell us about it.
We didn't get that close, Jimmy. I don't think you... did I even know you then?
Yes, of course you did.
Oh, yeah, of course I did, yeah.
I remember doing a photo shoot with you and you were in 2 casts. And then we posted that and they were like, this is not a very good message for cycling. It makes it look extremely dangerous.
It is dangerous. He broke both his arms.
Well, this is a specific type of cycling. Many years ago, I kind of came back to racing after a bit of a hiatus and did some fixed gear crits, which is crit races, circuit races that are quite technical on track bikes with no brakes. So you can only slow down by resisting the pedals. Actually, I did a couple in Germany and they were great. And they were actually quite safe because no one has brakes. So no one slows down that quickly. So you just flow and it was great. And the standard of riding was high. Did all right in those. I think I got like top 10 in one of the A races. I was like, sweet, I'm making a comeback. And then the very next race, I was like, this is confidence building, fitness building. Next race I did was Red Hook, Brooklyn. And in the qualifiers, I had never done a Red Hook before, so you get put at the back of the field. So I'm like 50th place, and you have to get the top 20 or something like that to get through to the final, maybe top 10. And I rode up right up to 20th wheel, like a few laps in, and then 2 guys just I don't even know how they crashed. They just crashed. Probably pedal strike or something, because obviously you're pedaling around the corners. 2 guys crashed right in front of me, and then I had to go in between them and straight into the barriers, where I hit my head very hard, and I like had concussion.
Right. How you doing, bro?
The qualification could have gone better. Hit my elbow pretty hard, hit my leg pretty hard. The elbow's probably the worst bit.
I remember hitting my head and feeling really sick, which I've done before as well in bike races. So you kind of stand up and you're like, it's a drunk feeling. And then I was like, oh, my arm hurts and my wrist hurts. And turns out I broke both of my arms. I didn't want to admit it. So after that, I sort of walked around with my mate Owen, who held the camera, and interviewed Roman Bardet while wearing a sling.
Yeah, you gonna crash? I did crash, yeah. Really hurts. I think I've broken my arm.
No, really?
Yeah, and they wanted to send me to hospital.
I'd say elbow. No, man, which heat are you in racing in? No.
Racing?
Why not? No, tomorrow. Not enough gears. Back to business.
Because I didn't want to get in the ambulance because I was in America and didn't have any health insurance.
Fair enough.
So I thought, I'd just do some work. Roman Bardet is a really nice guy. Yeah.
Was your friend holding the camera because you physically couldn't hold the camera?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't pick things up. So I broke my scaphoid in one arm, which is like still hurts. It never heals properly because there's not very much blood flow through it. And it's quite a common injury with cycling because it's when you put your hands out. And then my elbow, some sort of bone that begins with O, and I've got like lots of
which later had a load of
spaghetti
metal
junction
put
in there. Metal got put in, and then never got taken out, and it should have got taken out. So now my body's slowly rejecting it. My arm doesn't straighten, and my body slowly like more and more metal is poking out.
Oh,
so
great.
maybe one day I'll be able to just take it and put it on a mantelpiece.
Do you set off airport security things?
No, because it's not
Is that just
metallic. Magnetic. It's not that kind of metal.
Okay.
Can I just say the closing point of this is you did a bikepacking trip, maybe the American trip with Lawrence.
2 weeks later,
James.
I got the cast because I had a massive cast on my arm, and I was like, I don't want this for the trip, and the doctors wouldn't take it off. So you soak it. Okay, don't do this. You soak it in the bath or a sink and keep it wet, and then it cuts off really easily. So I took it off early.
So you literally removed your cast to do a bikepacking trip.
Yes. Think of the tan lines. So I actually switched it for the thing that someone at the race gave me, which was a wrist brace. So it was still getting some support. That wasn't completely silly. And then later on in that trip, is this on the list? The Lawrence crash.
Yes.
Later on during that trip, which was cycling through from San Diego up to LA, through Death Valley, through Yosemite Valley, San Francisco, to the top of up near Portland. It was a really long trip. And I was wearing this wrist brace. My other arm was kind of healed. I was a bit wonky on the bike the whole time. And I was with my friend Lawrence and James. Lawrence, carpenter, a lot of you will know from videos that we posted on this channel, and he has his own YouTube, was cycling in a circle while we were waiting for a ferry in San Francisco. Missed the ferry, and we just like watched him like,
How did he miss it?
see ya. Well, he's cycling in a circle. It's the kind of thing Lawrence does. He'd gone to buy some beers, and then he didn't, and then he just cycled in a circle instead of delivering them to us.
Do you want to explain to the viewers what's just happened?
We got on the ferry thinking it wasn't due to leave until 7:35.
Which the leaflet said.
Lawrence was, to be fair, dicking about. And Francis and I got on the ferry, and assuming it wasn't going to leave for another 20 minutes, and then the ferry just fucked off.
So Lawrence is over there somewhere.
I could see Lawrence in the background circling around in a marketplace. Fuck's sake.
So he panicked, jumped in an Uber as we got the ferry across to Oakland, which is where we were staying. And then we finally met him on the other end. Me and James had a couple of beers on the ferry. We were like, "Hey!" Lawrence came around the corner and then stacked it because his camera strap he was filming us, stacked it, crashed and broke his wrist. But I had a wrist brace and it was the right arm, the left arm.
Uh-oh.
What's that on your hand?
This, actually, thank God, Francis, is your amazing wrist shield, or whatever you call it. I don't think it's broken, but we had a bit of a whoopsie-woo-dah, as you would have seen.
So I had the perfect solution for him.
Well, that was very convenient.
It was.
Well, not for Lawrence, but that you had the brace.
Yeah, he was in a lot of pain for the next couple of days and then eventually he gave up. So we never got him to the end of that trip.
Oh, yeah, because you still had more riding to do, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. But one day, we'll get him to the end.
Well, I guess whilst we're on the subject of Lawrence, there is a very
this is my
infamous
favourite
clip of Lawrence crashing. And it is honestly, like, this is one of the... It is genuinely one of the most enjoyable moments I've ever seen where a bike is involved.
So this was at Red Bull time lapse, wasn't it? Which was a 24-hour relay race.
25-hour
relay race because it was on the day when the clocks go back.
or whatever it is.
The longest one-day race in the world.
Wait, who was in the team? You, Lawrence,
Ken Buckley,
and
Alex Dowsett.
And Alex Dowsett, who's a ex-pro.
He was pro at the time. Riding for Katusha.
Yeah. And
Alpecin.
they were doing their changeover. Lawrence was getting on and Alex gave him a little push off.
But you're not allowed to do that. you're not allowed to get on your bike until you run, switch the wristband as a relay, and then you go to the end. You run your bike to the end and jump on. And Lawrence only remembered that halfway through getting on his bike, and Alex was already pushing him. So he was pushed him while getting off his bike. He just stacked it.
Wristband to Lawrence.
Cheers, bro. Thank you.
Good luck, Matt. Oh God, this is bad stuff.
You got
that. We laughed for a very long time. And then I laugh every year on Facebook when it gets, look, check out this memory.
And Lawrence was unhurt by that, wasn't he?
Oh, he was fine. Yeah. Then we came second.
Great.
That's why we came second. We would have won otherwise. There was a team of juniors who beat us. But it was pesky juniors. We would have made it if it wasn't for those pesky kids.
Jimmy, do you have any stories?
I have a collection of crashes, but I guess only one. I have one that was like significantly more significant than the other less significant ones.
Okay.
I don't know. It's another not very good message for cycling, but perhaps people can learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
I finished work on Friday. The London Marathon was on the Sunday, which I was doing. I had a very cheap single speed commuter bike I used to get around London on. Finished work, went for a couple of beers, probably one or two more than I should have had whilst I was riding and doing a race on Sunday. You have to pick up your number for London Marathon early. So I rode over to the Excel Centre, picked up my number, signed on, did all of that stuff, was riding home. And there was this little hill where I used to live in Waltham. No, not Walthamstow. Where did we used to live? Leytonstone, that's the one. This little hill to get over this railway track. And I decided to get out the saddle. And to be fair, this accident wasn't caused by alcohol. And if you've ridden a single speed or a track bike, the chain tension is managed by how tight the rear wheel is in the frame. It being a very cheap bike, mostly made of cheese, Francis would refer to it as a bike-shaped object rather than a bike. The wheel slipped, the chain came off, and whilst I was out of the saddle, I basically face planted and I woke up with lots of people around me, an ambulance car thing, and some woman shouting, I didn't touch him on the car that stopped behind where I had crashed. I remembered she didn't clip my wheel. The chain came off, and there's nothing you can do. I basically just face planted. The guy in the ambulance was like, "Oh, do you want me to give you a lift home?" I'm like, "Can I put the bike in?" He was like, "No." I was like, "Oh, I'll walk then." And I hobbled the remaining mile and a half with blood coming down my leg, blood on my arm, hobbled home, and then I couldn't walk for about 3 weeks afterwards.
And I opened the door to him and I was like, this is a very extravagant way of getting out of doing London Marathon. My goodness.
Love cycling. I hate crashes like that. Chain snapping is the other one, isn't it? You just can't, it's not your fault really, and it just
I
really
legitimately for months, maybe even years afterwards, had like out of the saddle paranoia.
Yeah.
Just doing because I was doing triathlon and stuff at the time, so I did a lot of training, a lot of riding. I used to do every single climb and every sprint in the saddle for about 18 months. Just so much paranoia about it.
Isn't it mad, the psychology of professional athletes who can crash really hard and get back on and still go? Like it was a big reason why I could not carry on racing.
Yeah.
Admittedly, the crashes that I saw were fatal, but even the smaller ones affect you. And people like Pidcock will crash hard and then he'll be back in a sprint. It's like there's a bit missing in your brain that you just don't have this PTSD from crashing. And a lot of pro riders can do it, or they have real good therapists.
Yeah, it's
they
brutal.
get mentally strong. It's funny how it affects you. I got one more, which is a medical observation as well.
Okay.
And probably a regret and message for younger riders. I was doing a local elite race years ago, and big bunch, very, very fast. I was just in the peloton. Mitch from my team, Mitch Webber, don't know if he's still racing. and a couple of other teammates were all in one place in the bunch. He went down. It was just like a touch of wheels. I went down behind him. And then it was day one of a stage race as well, 3 days. And I crashed and got so much road rash all over my leg that it healed up over a couple of weeks. Firstly, finish the stage race, and you just like wrap cling film around it and hope for the best. So 3 days later, you then like actually assess the damage. And it took so many layers of skin off my leg that now my left leg doesn't grow leg hair at all. And on the right side, it's very hairy. It's not compensating. It was hairy anyway. And looking back and having spoken to a few medical people since then, I probably should have had gone to hospital and maybe a skin graft or something like that, because it was so deep. And it took a long time to recover from. So
Gross.
Also, for the majority of road rash, a lot of bike racers, me included, will go, let it dry out. It's usually the easiest. Yes, it will probably scar more and it will be more visible, but it's usually the easiest solution. For something like that, instead of letting it dry out, I should have just kept it under wraps. Like you put like cream on it and some cling film and you keep it moist. And I should have done that, or some sort of proper dressing.
Or just seek medical attention.
Yeah, maybe a professional. Yeah.
There seems to be a theme with you and not seeking medical attention.
It's fine now. My wife is a doctor, so I see a medical professional all the time.
I see.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about the time I thought I was going to get airlifted?
Really? Where were you?
So, it's only partially relevant to this because it isn't actually cycling.
Oh, during your ultramarathon?
Yeah, it was the Brecon Ultramarathon, which I didn't finish. And to this day, I'm like, I need to go back and do that one day. So it's basically 2 loops of the Brecon Marathon, 20-something miles per loop, and there was 2 of them. I did the first lap in about 4 hours, and I was like, I'm flying here. I'm doing great. And then I managed to push too hard and in true running fashion got a knee injury. At which point I was just like, I'm going to just keep going, when I should have just stopped when I was at the bottom of a mountain.
Future Jimmy would have said, just give up, just have a sit down.
And I should have.
Have a sleep.
These are the sort of reasons why I know that now. That is what I should have done. But instead what I did was the next 6 or 7 miles took the same amount of time as the first 22. Ooh. And at this point I was now on top of a hillside with no phone signal in the middle of nowhere. Literally there was no people anywhere. There wasn't even people coming past me. And eventually someone ran past me or caught up with where I was, and the weather had descended. I was in like full winter kit because the event happens in winter as well, of course. And I was just like, even at that point, I hadn't realized that I was in trouble, and they carried on running. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just, my knee's giving me a bit of jip. And then I got to the point where I was just like, how far is the next checkpoint? And you start having to go downhill. And that was when I just couldn't walk on it properly at all. And there was just this moment where I was just like, I really don't want to have to call this in somehow or get someone to like send help, because the only option is going to be getting airlifted. I was like, I didn't want to be that person. So I basically hopped about another 2 miles to the next checkpoint. And then they brought 4x4 up a hill to collect me at a point that was able to do that.
They cover you in the silver thing like a baked potato.
This compulsory kit, you have to have one anyway. But I think I probably refused it because I was trying to be tough, Jimmy.
Double-hard.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't get airlifted, but there was a point there I thought I might have to. And one day I'll go back and do that. Do you fancy doing an ultramarathon?
I mean, you've made it sound so appealing.
I don't know what my stance is on ultra, as a personal thing. Do I want to do any more? Probably not.
Any more?
I mean, ultra, I've done like
Ultra
500k rides
stuff.
and things like that. And just takes chunks out of you, doesn't it? It's not good for you. As I get older, the more I'm focused on doing a good amount of exercise that keeps me healthy, a varied amount of exercise, not just 25 hours of bike every week, which is great if you want to be a fast cyclist, but not the best if you want to be a healthy person.
Everything in moderation, that's what they say.
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
It? My mum, I've mentioned this before, my mum's a chiropodist pediatrist, looked at Jimmy's feet and was like, honestly, don't run again.
At all.
You have the feet of a 60-year-old and you were 35 at the time.
No, I was way younger than that. I would have been about 30. That's best part of a decade ago. She gave me that advice.
Yeah, she was like, some people just aren't meant to just run that far.
Well, she said, don't run long, but if you want to run short and fast, you can. I was like, how short? She's like, I don't know, like 400 meters.
Really short. Nice.
Anything
else to add from anyone? Have you had any crashes, Emily?
You can't say, can you? No, touch wood, touch wood, touch wood, touch wood. No.
Okay.
Don't ask me. Don't look at me. Don't think about it. Just, I don't want any of that bad juju. Send it away. Not for me. I feel like we should end on a note of, if you do have a crash, don't do what Francis does. Do seek medical attention.
And being Mr. Demotivator, if you can, don't have a crash in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what, actually?
Be sensible, guys.
I feel like this leads into, I didn't write it down on our sheet, but we did get an email in from someone this week who wears a mouth guard when they cycle, and they were wanting to know what our opinion was of riding with a mouth guard in.
I think it's very sensible, because I'm not even joking. When I descend, I used to do boxing and Muay Thai many years ago, and one of the things that you learn with teeth and not getting knocked out is you close your mouth, you clench your teeth so that your jaw isn't loose.
Yeah.
There are times where I descend, I'm like, if I do crash, if I've got my jaw bitten, like, tight, then I'm less likely to knock my teeth out. So I'm all for it.
If I think about the times I have crashed while biking normally, it is 0. It's always been brakeless race, doing some stupid mountain biking.
Racing.
Racing, yeah. And most people are not doing that. So it's a very safe sport and activity and hobby, whichever one you would like to pick.
Speak for yourself, though, because a lot of the people that I know that ride with clubs locally, they are weekend bike racers around the roads of Northumberland.
Yeah, most people are not. Most people are riding on their own through town, nice and leisurely.
Mm-hmm. Should we do fluff up of the week?
Yes, and we have a wonderful one thanks to Francis. Forgot his clothes again, Cade.
That audience member again. Yeah. I forgot my clothes today, so I'm dressed as Jimmy. Which luckily we dress exactly the same and at the same size. So,
and what did you find in the pocket?
I've got
Francis?
bib shorts on. I'm not wearing your pants. Look, I've got bib shorts on.
There was
underneath.
pants in the pocket for you.
This chamois time of this ride is really long.
You could. There is always a pair of pants in the pocket of those trousers for when I ride in.
Well, I know we're level 5 friends, but I bib shorts were comfy. Okay. I'll just stay in them.
Fine.
It's cushioning for the seat.
Well, you don't wear pants under your bib shorts.
Dun dun dun.
Time for another round of overrated or underrated. I'm going to read out a list of things, and you are going to tell me if they are overrated or underrated. First up, gravel conversions. So,
underrated.
AKA drop bars and rigid fork on hardtails, suggested by Marco. So mountain bike geometry with drop bars. Is that what we're getting here?
Have you seen all the bikes at Leadville, which was historically a mountain bike race, cross country? Loads of people riding drop handlebars on their full suspension mountain bikes.
Right.
And it is very, very, very fast, as you can imagine, because you've got all of the comfort and shock absorption plus aero gains, which does make a difference when you're racing very, very fast. So that's kind of cool.
But the caveat to that is you're talking about fast on technical gravel.
Big gravel.
Yeah.
It's big gravel. It's cross country. Like, obviously, the lines are being blurred. But
my opinion on it is, personally, I do not love the look of it. However, I have absolutely no problem with it. And if people are into it and people like an example you gave, if I was racing gravel, like properly racing technical gravel, I'd be like, yep, that's for me. Because it's gonna, like as you described, it's gonna be fast.
yeah.
But I don't need it in my life, and it's not something that just appeals to me for just normal riding that I do.
Why do people dislike it? Because is the argument, why are you not just riding a hardtail mountain bike?
I think people think it's ugly. I think some people are really bad with change, and it's merging the drop bar world with a flat bar world.
It's like fusion cuisine, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Unbelievably, I don't understand why, but drop bar people and flat bar people in most cases are not the same people, and I don't understand.
It's like Anchorman, they meet up to fight in parking lots.
A bit of it must be the incompatibility of parts, because as much as Nick would not like to admit it, having in his bike shop, a lot of people go on the rides together, and he rides really aggressive gravel bikes with massive tire clearance, and for the northeast stuff that they call gravel, which isn't actually gravel. And a lot of that is because stocking one set of stuff in the shop, which is all drop bar group sets and gravel group sets, is significantly easier and everything is compatible. Whereas if you add mountain bike stuff in, suddenly you have loads more standards and loads of different bottom brackets and boost and different suspension forks and all these things. And a lot of it doesn't interchange
Very true.
well.
That's probably where it comes from in the first place, isn't it? People wanting to get more into that scene. But
I've got a cross-country mountain bike at home in my garage, and I'm like, I have spares for all of my road stuff, which you accumulate over time. And it's like, oh, great, I can just switch this on this and this and this. My mountain bike is like a completely different thing. You're like, I need this bottom bracket or this type of tire. I
do feel like there is a lot of overlap that's coming through now, because you've got SRAM, which have got suspension. Well, it's not technically SRAM, is it? It's what's the man?
UDH. Are you talking about?
No, what's the suspension fork company that SRAM own?
RockShox,
yeah. So they've got a gravel suspension fork which doesn't have as extreme tire clearance. EE/Cane Creek have also got one as well. There's also like some of the mullet setups with SRAM are using mountain bike rear mechs, but with drop bar things. There is stuff that's crossing over now.
Oh, it'd be amazing if it was just all compatible one day.
Did we say overrated, underrated?
Underrated. I think it's cool. And I've seen people do it for other reasons as well. Do you remember Nick Hussey, who was a business owner, and he was in Kingston Wheelers years ago, the first cycling club I ever joined. He crashed and had a very bad back at one point, and he made a bike which he called the Franken bike, which was drop handlebars on a full suspension system, so his back didn't get jarred around, and it was nice and high at the front. I think it had like a lefty fork on it, one of those Cannondale ones. A nice solution if you have an injury. So people should ride whatever works. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Underrated.
Next up, X-Pro Team bikes, aka second-hand bikes from Pro Team, suggested by Declan in Ireland.
I would not get one.
I wouldn't either.
It depends how in a pro cycling you are, I guess, doesn't it?
I would only get one if it was a wall bike.
Oh, yeah. It's because they get 10 years worth of use in 1 year. Okay, that's a slight exaggeration.
They get crashed, they get thrown around, they get bashed, they get jet washed. They are not looked after in a way that is conducive to a long-term product. They jet wash all of the crap out of the bearings and then just replace the bearings. It's like they're not being looked after for longevity.
And presumably they're expensive.
No, the teams sell them off at like good prices sometimes. And some of the staff get first dibs.
It'll come down to who as well, won't it?
Yeah.
Like if you want to buy Pog's old bike, it's going to cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to buy someone who I don't even know a name of a person, but it's a team bike, then you can probably get it.
And it's their training bike, things like that. You might get lucky and get one of those different carbon layups that's not available to the general public, but the team's actually riding races. But even then, speaking to Rob, that carbon expert man, you might not want that because it'll be really brittle and good for racing, but terrible for normal use.
I think overrated if you want it as an actual bike that you use. I think underrated if you want the memorabilia, because I think it is kind of cool having like a nice if you're the kind of person which is going to put bikes on the wall, having a bike like that on the wall is a really good talking piece. Like I've said it loads of times and I'll say it again. If I could get Marco Pantani's bike, not that I actually care that. There's just something about that period of time and those bikes.
Do you think he had a special carbon layup?
I'm definitely thinking about pre-carbon.
Oh, you get okay.
We did have a few emails from people sending you links to. I'm not sure if they're his, but they're replica bikes.
Why haven't you? You've got to let me know about these.
All right, okay, I'll send them to you.
I just want it needs to be small. If it's a small size, which back then a small was probably a 58 centimeter top tube.
Yeah.
Then
get it. So we know now what to get Jimmy for Christmas now.
Yep.
As well.
Mint condition Marco Pantani bike.
Yeah, Francis, what you saying? Overrated, underrated?
Overrated. It's enticing, but it's probably a bad idea.
Fair enough.
Track stands, fixie or not, suggested by John.
Underrated.
Overrated.
Why? I'm not clipping in and out.
I know, because you do your cleats up so tight
Yes,
that you
once
can't.
I'm in, I clip in at the start of the ride, that's it. No unclipping.
Unnecessary. People probably and almost certainly fall off all of the time trying to look cool doing a track stand.
As we just discussed, I've never ever fallen off on a normal bike ride.
Yeah. I have nothing else to add.
Fair, go on.
Dave Grohl.
I don't consume very much news. So what has happened with Dave Grohl?
I think it's come out that he's had a child out of wedlock. Is that what you say? A love child.
Oh, is he?
I believe so.
Are we going to critique the artist or the art?
It's up to you. I put it in because it's some sort of news topical and we like to divert onto non-cycling topics on this show.
Musically, he's done some really cool stuff and is very iconic.
I was just listening to Song of the Dead,
But
that
I
intro.
still think he's overrated. And there is a time in my past where I would have said Dave Grohl's one of the greatest people in music of all time. But I've kind of moved on.
Song for the Dead?
Songs for the Dead. Song for the Dead? Songs. Maybe songs.
That is him, right? That album. It's why it sounds like Foo Fighters.
Drumming, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It doesn't sound like Foo Fighters.
No, the production. It's like the cleanest album.
It sounds like Queens.
Well, it sounds like Queens of the Stone Age, but produced
by Dave
completely different. Like it's a standout album, completely.
Yeah.
Can you play that intro?
If I learned it, yeah.
Jimmy is a drummer, everybody.
Yeah, I could. I don't want to, but I could.
And you're speaking as a drummer.
I'm saying overrated because he's like a god, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Overrated.
He's very good, but he's not a god.
You were using the Lachlan Morton analogy again.
Yeah, this is it,
He's
exactly.
very, very good, but he's not a god. Yeah. He's getting god status. It's coming.
Tea.
Overrated. It's just if you want a coffee, but instead of being nice, you just want it to be sadness. You have a tea.
I feel the opposite way.
Yeah, I do as well, actually.
You're less addicted to coffee.
Coffee is functional. I get up in the morning, I have a couple of coffees. Once I'm coffeeed out, it's much more pleasant having a tea than a coffee because, let's be perfectly honest, 100% of coffee tastes like ash. If you're not addicted to caffeine, why would you ever drink coffee? It is disgusting.
I've never
pleasant.
not been addicted to coffee.
And the reason I know this is from my Pro Plus phase.
Oh, I remember this. You just used to take Pro Plus instead of coffees.
I replaced coffee with Pro Plus, and what I learned from that is I was heavily addicted to caffeine, not coffee. Coffee is actually terrible to taste, but because so many of us are so addicted to caffeine, it convinces us that actually it's fantastic. It isn't. It tastes like ash. It's disgusting, but it still has a place in my life because I need it.
Tiramisu's nice. That's coffee.
It's not really though, is it? It's sugar and cream.
I wanted to put tea on there because I'm a tea lover and I hate coffee. And I think coffee has infiltrated the world market and tea hasn't.
I think it probably has.
But like America's a big place and they don't love it, do they?
I think a lot of Americans do drink tea.
Do they? Well,
Yeah.
Americans in the comments.
The problem is they don't have kettles though. That's what's holding them back.
I don't get this. Danny's got a kettle.
She does have a kettle.
Yeah, it's just a normal kettle. And I was like, oh, is it going to take ages to boil? And it does slightly, but not that much longer because their plugs are a different voltage or something.
Oh.
So you things like kettles, which are very intensive with electricity.
Does that mean they
with
can't have
power.
air fryers?
No, she has that as well.
Oh, okay,
it all
fine.
works. It just takes a little bit longer.
Oh.
Plugs aren't as good either. The plugs that look like little faces.
No, they're not as good.
They're not as good. The UK plug is god tier if we were to put it on the cool wall.
Agreed.
Underrated UK plug. My pal one of my best pals has lived in New York for absolutely ages. And when he's a big tea drinker, he is like a professional tea drinker, not literally. And I went and visited him when he'd been there for maybe like 18 months, 2 years, something like that. So ages and ages ago. And he was like basically used to just educate people on how to actually make tea and was like really like it was a big deal to him. Ultimately, a lot of Americans, apparently, maybe not anymore, used to make tea in a microwave. So you basically put water in a mug, do or don't put a tea bag in it, and then microwave it.
Oh.
100% of the time, that's going to make a terrible tea.
Agreed, yes. Yeah. To make a good tea, you have to have the right accoutrement.
It's already terrible. Overrated.
Thank you for your suggestions. If you want to suggest anything for overrated or underrated, please send it to wildonespodcast@cademedia.co.uk and we might read yours out on a future episode. Shall we get into listeners takeover? I did not read that right. Let's do listeners takeover.
Yes. First one's from John. What do you think of a bike shop that included brake rotor change in a service? I found out later that they don't have a micrometer or any other method of measuring the thickness. I was annoyed. Regards, John. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What he's saying is he got his bike serviced, they changed the rotors, but they don't have a micrometer to measure the thickness.
That. Yeah, they should check that. Some people don't even know, but a rotor slowly gets thinner over time. It's not just the pads you've got to change. Just like the braking surfaces of a wheel. So over time, your brake rotors go from skinny to extra skinny.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The context seems like he's been for a service, they've changed his brake rotors and presumably charged him for that service. He wasn't aware that that was going to happen and perhaps not aware of the increased charge as a result of that. And he perhaps thinks that they didn't need changing, and he says they didn't have a micrometer or any other method of measuring the thickness. So is he disputing the fact that they changed his rotors and they didn't have any way of qualifying that they needed changing?
Yeah, it's a bit naughty to just change them without actually measuring it.
I have two thoughts on this. My first thought is if they were going to change something that hadn't been previously agreed, they should contact him first.
Yeah.
Like you would in a car garage or whatever. Because stuff's so expensive now, you know. If it costs 100, 150 quid, because, you know, if he's got a top-end bike, how much are SRAM red rotors? They're like 200 quid each.
Assuming, even if they're the cheaper ones, it could be 20, 30 pounds for a rotor.
Right.
Which is still a lot of money. That adds up. It's 40 quid if it's two.
So I would expect the shop to just kind of like ping him a message, drop him a call and go, look, we think the rotors need changing. It's going to cost this amount of money. Are you happy to go ahead? And if he says no, then you go, okay, cool. We'll leave them as they are. I'm not convinced that a micrometer is needed for a rotor check, though.
Well, there's a little tool which just slots on and tells you if it's worn or not, which is very, very cheap.
But surely in a good, experienced bike shop, no.
Also, micrometer. Can't you just use verniers?
Well, yeah, regardless of the
thing.
specific tool.
Yeah, I don't.
I feel like...
No, you don't. It's so thin. You wouldn't like look by eye. Maybe a very experienced mechanic. It's usually a thing that I haven't had to do it for ages. We swap bikes too much, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
That is a privileged position to be in. But I don't know. In terms of contacting the customer, you should. We always did it when I worked in a bike shop. When the customer brought their bike in for service, you say, do you want us to change things if they need replacing and not tell you? Or would you like to, should we just go ahead and do it?
Yeah.
Or should we give you a call before and once we've assessed the damage? And some people don't mind. They just want a new bike.
Yep.
All new parts replaced, and then it saves you the effort. But it's that one initial conversation at the start that makes things easy.
Because I've definitely been at Backyard Bike Shop, which our friend Nick is the mechanic at, and James Jobber as well. And I've definitely heard them having calls where they're like phoning the customers and going like, right, so this is the situation. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Which is perhaps what's missing from this step.
Yeah.
Yes.
Regardless of their determination of why they're doing it or not. Like, if it's going to cost any significant amount of money, you'd want to know beforehand.
This creates an awkward situation because I'm sure his old rotors are now in the bin.
Yeah.
Or they've stolen them
on
eBay and they've measured them with a secret micrometer and gone, they're still fine.
Straight on eBay because they're perfectly good.
Yeah.
I think that in the future, John, you should tell them very categorically, very specifically, whatever bike shop you use, do not change stuff without contacting me first.
Next one's from Ian with the subject, cross or gravel. He says, right, gang, I have a couple of road bikes, but want something to be able to go off-road with. In winter, I want to be able to rip it up for an hour or so, but also have the option to strap packs on for summer outings. I'm also tempted to dip my toe into a few cross races. I realise a cross bike will be more race-oriented, and also being 50, that's made me a little sceptical. I also want something that's not too sluggish. Option to increase tyre width too. I'd imagine cross bikes will mainly come with 33mm width. Looking at around 3k to spend on a bike and definitely thinking only want a one buy on the bike to keep things simple. Just want to hear your views. Thanks, Ian.
That's quite a lot of requirements for one bike. The easy answer is don't look at cross bikes.
Not many brands make a real cross bike anymore.
Yeah, they're just not needed.
And I mean, if you're only dipping your toe in, you're probably going to be fine with most gravel bikes. I think majority of athletes who are even winning at cyclocross these days, they're not riding traditional cross bikes, which are really, really fast handling. Like the Specialized sponsored athletes, they're just riding pretty much a gravel bike. So, and they're still winning. So,
well, this is it. I think that's because the brands have realised there's not really much of a market in selling cross bikes, so they put all of their energy into gravel bikes. So the sponsored athletes are riding what the brands want them to ride. They're almost like a redundant thing now, aren't they?
Yeah. If you ask Tony, local legend, he's been on this channel lots. He's won the national champs for his age group in cyclocross and has been racing for years. He's holding on to his old cross bikes for dear life that they don't make anymore. Because he prefers how they handle. He says usually cornering, you can just get the power down a little bit quicker because it's higher bottom bracket, easier to shoulder. Generally, the older bikes had. We've lost a few of those characteristics, I believe, through the more modern geometries, which are pretty much gravel bikes. For a versatile bike, to get a gravel bike.
But presumably Tony, he's not just got a cross bike. He's got a cross bike and he's got a gravel bike. And he's got a mountain bike.
Well, he's got multiple cross bikes because he's the kind of person which needs a bike change during a race because he's actually winning stuff.
He has 2 identical cross bikes and he doesn't know which one's which.
So if you're just choosing one of those, surely there's more versatility in the gravel bike.
Oh yeah,
100%. Yeah, and if he wants to do outings as well, the chances are the gravel bike will have better accommodation for putting bikes and packs and things on it. It might have extra bolts to be able to bolt stuff straight on, but it'll just be more likely to have considered space for that kind of thing.
If you're just dipping your toe in, there are also lots of cross races that just allow any bike.
Well, I think they pretty much all do
mountain bikes sometimes. Yeah. It depends on the level you're racing at. Of course, Tony's races are next level up and it is more serious. But
I think for someone which isn't trying to win that event, you could still turn up and ride any bike.
I'm not sure, but not the UCI ones. But yeah, like the local series. I'm sure if you spoke to the organisers, there's leeway. I think there's leeway.
Because when I used to do the London cross stuff, there would always be people there. There would be some people there on like a flat bar bike.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't do like, a tyre check because technically cross has to be 33.
Yeah.
Which is very narrow.
Small. But they would all ride tubs and things like that to get to run super low pressure. So it's quite cool. Like they have these constraints and then everyone's trying to make their bike the best they can while using essentially tires that are too skinny for the conditions.
Did they allow fairings? Because he could get
go for it.
He could get a gravel bike, and then what he loses in the race geometry, he could make up for with a huge fairing on his back.
Imagine trying to get past someone on the corners where they're a big fairing that just slaps you in the face, like that thing from Jackass of the giant hand that goes.
Oh, doing a cross race in like a sumo suit or something would be a funny video.
They had there's an event called Muddy Hell, which I think was definitely run years ago, and they must still do it now, surely, at Herne Hill Velodrome, where people wear Halloween outfits and it's just like the maddest costumes. Yeah. This is really good.
I did one of them once.
Did you?
It was like a secret thing in South London, and they like give you, because it was, I think technically on land they weren't allowed to use.
No way.
So they tell you where the venue is like an hour before.
It's like
they
a rave.
tell you the rough, basically, yeah. And it was pitch black. Everyone was in costumes. I did it with a couple of our mates, and like I turned up in a skin suit with like a Halloween mask and like it was like a black and white. Anyway, it looked like I was in a skeleton suit. And it was absolute carnage because it was pitch black, but like a proper cross course, like aggressive cross course.
Yeah, so in summary, get a gravel bike.
And a skeleton suit.
Please keep sending your email, stories, suggestions and fun stuff to wildonespodcast@cademedia.co.uk.
That's all for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow and or subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. Thank you and see you next week.
Cross bikes and bollocks.